Hello, good day to all of you, and thank you for clicking on and listening to what I have to say, as if that makes any difference. It's just a few thoughts. 30 years in the police, so obviously have an opinion. I'm walking Arthur, my dog, at the moment. There he is. So he gets something out of that. He's quite small, Border Terrier, Jack Russell Cross, really cute mix, and they're so robust. I mean, they don't break or anything. They just, like, if a leg fell off, it would grow back the next day. Seriously, don't get these pedigree things. They're a lot of money. But anyway, well, it's been busy, hasn't it? Lots of protests still. And London and TSG are out. I'm getting a lot of things about why didn't they do this for the BLM marches and the protests about the climate change, all this sort of thing. And they've got a point. And I did one about the Dover protests, and I wasn't too popular on that, but I don't think there's a lesson for doing podcasts. I kept the opinions about the other protests where in London to the end, and I think a lot of people, when they watch these things, don't necessarily watch the end. Okay, so I had a bit of a skewed idea of what I was thinking on that one. But anyway, the protests at the moment, I mean, these ones at the moment seem to be because people are a bit upset that they don't want to be told to wear a mask. I'm being a little bit facetious. It's about liberty, choice, isn't it? It's about all that sort of thing. And but now's not the time. If you think about it, in the Second World War, First World War, you need to act as a whole. You cannot have so many headless chickens. Too many chiefs is a disaster. So therefore, you just have to put your hope in the government, and that's a dirty word. It always has been. Sorry about that sun in your eyes there. It's a dirty word, isn't it? Because the government is like, oh yeah, well, they're rubbish because they do this, that and the other. But you, at the moment, they're the ones with access to the most information. And politics aside, I don't believe there's people there who are purposely doing something to harm others. I think anybody, if they were in that position, unless they were, you know, psychotic, I know what you're going to say. I'm just trying to do the best with what they've got. So leave the politics aside. They're going to be listening to the World Health Organization and that side of things, and coming up to some sort of conclusion. And guess what? Loads of people are going to disagree with it, and they're going to Sky will drag some professor off who says, "Oh, this is the worst thing. Oh, masks are killing people," and all this sort of thing. And do you know what? Nobody really knows. But then what makes somebody else who's protesting the boss to decide how they risk my life? That's the bit that I'm struggling with here, guys. So what about the protests? Yeah. So you've got TSG, Tactical Sport Group. They're the ones with the helmets and the proper jobs. So they've got I think 3 levels. You've got your basic police officer who joins one day, gets given a hard, not a visor or anything, but flat caps and whatever, and they're given a few basic tactics about how to hold a wall, sort of thing. And then you've got those that are level 2. I'm a bit outdated with this one now, but level 2 that are slightly more trained. And then you've got your other ones, the creme de la creme, who go around and do all the warrants and do this sort of thing, do the football matches where they're particularly expecting trouble, and also the hardest riots. Now, I said at the time, and I was pretty shocked, and I was listening, and I speak to TSG people live when they're actually at BLM riots, and they were all tucked up and they weren't being used because the bosses were using politics, was getting in the way of protests. And they were touchy-feeling, and I'll tell you why. I'm quite certain it was because they didn't want another 2011 riots in London. And they thought if they were seen to be over harsh in the black community, it would have just been a tinder keg going off, sparks everywhere. Huge nightmare. But my view is you can't be held to ransom, and you've got to deal with each protest with the level of violence that it's receiving. But ultimately, PSU public order is not just about dealing with violence. It's dealing with the protests. Is it legal, lawful, or what? No, it's not lawful. Is it dangerous? Well, yeah, because they're mixing it up and they're spreading disease around, quite frankly. And in my view, they're ignorant, selfish attitudes, or they've just been brainwashed to suggest that they know better than everyone else, and they've got the right to put everyone at risk for their liberty, for my own liberty. You only have liberty if it isn't at the detriment of somebody else. That's with everything. That's why we have rules and regulations. So TSG are used, and I'm not there. And to be honest, I can only go from the experience of public order training that I've had, which was the middle one. And to be honest, it's not only to stop violence, it's to clear roads, to clear them. And maybe this is where we're getting replies, information that, oh, they just charged perfectly peaceful, you know, and plus the level of what's considered peaceful is being slipped here. Someone shouting and gobbing off in someone's face is not peaceful to me. That's not peaceful. You're an arse and you need to be dealt with if you are shouting at a police officer 3 inches from his face. And we've all seen them, they just stand there holding the line. That's not peaceful. No, I've been on a protest. I've been on the protest for the police pensions because it was going to affect my colleagues. It wasn't going to affect me, but I went on. It was 135,000 of us down in London. Guess what? There was no rioting. They had police there, like on duty. And I also remember some guy who looked like you'd think he was usually a customer of the police. And he had a banner saying, "Not all cops are bastards." And I thought it was really sweet. I did. I thought it was lovely. And that brings us to, doesn't it, Matt Ratana, police sergeant who was shot 5 times whilst in custody, which just shows there's no safe place. You'd think you'd be relatively safe in police custody. And the overriding information I'm getting is that this man was the sweetest, loveliest man you could ever dream of. From genuine people who've booked prisoners in with him, who say that he recognised the stress police officers were under, the long hours they were doing, that he was literally, people would come to work and say, "Hey, come on, hug, you know, slap his chest. You need a hug, come on. Have a custody hug," I think was one quote. So he was obviously quite a character, quite a effervescent character. Somebody who everyone remembered because of his character. And I'm just thinking that maybe with all the protesters and the early BLM riots, it should have been dealt with a lot more harshly with the violence levels. It should have been TSG there for the start. And I think if there were riots, then we deal with the riots. That's easy for me to say, isn't it? But maybe those protesters, I think there was a lot of very naive and ignorant. And I say it sounds really patronising, whatever. And I mean it in the genuinest terms. They didn't have the experience and knowledge to judge the world around them at that stage. They've come out of a very left-wing school education system. It's very much at a time when police have always been unfashionable to young people from years dot. They want to rebel, don't they? I don't want to be told. The police are just another branch of my parents. They stop me from doing things. But they also don't have the experience to know the dangers behind not following rules, and that the rules are there to protect them as well. And I think the death of Matt and people like him in the police give these youngsters a bit of a reminder when they hear about the individuals behind that, oh, well, he's different from the character that I've heard that all police were. Because I've been led to believe that police beat you up for no reason and then and they just kill people. You know, if you listen to Black Lives Matter and whatever and don't actually check the specific facts out, that's why they initially naively thought it was about reducing racism. Now, who wouldn't want that? Who wouldn't want to reduce racism, to make the world a much fairer society? Any sane person would want that. But to point the finger at the police and then to basically make lies about them, listing a whole people's names of victims of police murder, is an absolute disgusting joke, quite frankly. So hopefully there's people out there that will listen to what's being said about Matt Ratana, and will see the absolutely wonderful character he was. Big, gentle giant, with 14 or so weeks left before the end of his retirement, 30 years. You know, it's absolutely devastating for all those people. But it's just a reminder, I think, for everyone. These are human beings. They're decent people. And we don't, when we join the police, go through a make us racist and bigoted filter. We don't do that. There is none. So we're normal people who join the police. But it's an easy badge to give everyone, isn't it? We hate the police. And I think if it came down to it, if they met individual police officers and they followed them around in their shift, I bet every single one of them will say, oh, I didn't mean them. I didn't actually mean those. I mean others. Well, I wouldn't have been in the police for 30 years on frontline if I had to put up with arseholes like that, to be honest, with people who were basically criminals in uniform. And when they pop up now and then, no one's more happy than a police officer when these people are fired or sent to prison or whatever, you know. So that's protests. Young people will be young people. It is true. They probably, some of them are a little bit scared and they don't want to face the truth, so they just go out and have fun and pretend it doesn't exist. That can be described as utterly selfishness and whatever, and I describe that because definition of that, it is quite selfish. You're not thinking of the repercussions by just putting it out your mind and pretending it doesn't exist. So, you know, I think that's where I'm at the moment. Thank you for joining me. Please like and subscribe if you liked it. Please put the comments on there if you've got issues with what I've said. There will be plenty of people who will criticise me on this side of things, but that's the joy of it, isn't it? Catch you later. Thank you.